Honorable Prime Minister, before you came this morning, when I arrived, a farmer walked up to me. Mr. Spence, the Prime Minister come for true? So I said, yes, he wouldn't make a promise and we wouldn't set up all of this. He's not going to be here. He said, that is good, We just want to know, say, income, We just want to know, say, income. You don't have to do nothing more than just come true, So I said to him, I bet you did not know that the Prime Minister is a farmer himself. He said, I didn't know that. Well, I said, yes. His father is a farmer, currently very active in St. Elizabeth. The Prime Minister has his own greenhouse and is very, very keen on technology application in it. Water timing and all kind of thing. It's a serious matter. It's mango season. Some of you don't know, but Prime Minister, I'm pleased to advise, it's $5,000 a dozen. You could be supplementing your income from right up here. The only thing I'm asking you, let me get one for taste this year. I tell you, I'll say one more thing, All of this that you are seeing here looking so nice, it's a facade. Prime Minister, this is truly a facade. So when people say you go and you turn on water, you do a thing and then the thing vanish after, I'm guaranteeing that this will vanish. Because where you are, ladies and gentlemen, you are on a farmer's plot. All of this tent, all the marl that you see lay down there will go shortly. When you come back here, it's going to be crops. So, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm preempting all of that to let the country know that this is a facade and what will truly be here is serious agriculture production. If you look around, it is land clearing that is taking place. And we're going to turn our water over there so for irrigation in this very plot. Right? So, this is a facade. But it is truly a facade before the genuine and real purpose for what we intend to have here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know you have been looking forward for this moment. And I've already spoken about the Prime Minister's presence. So, he's a visionary. Consistently steer this nation towards growth and prosperity. A champion for the farmers, a champion for the poor, whose leadership has been pivotal in guiding Jamaica's journey through what? Challenges and opportunities. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hand together and make welcome Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, to deliver the keynote address.
Permanent Secretary, I don't know why you have felt the need to tell this audience my business. Yes, I do have a passion for agriculture. My father is currently a farmer, a struggling farmer. I spent many summers on his farm, and so I have a deep appreciation for the struggles that farmers go through. Weather, finance, and of course, this very strange thing we call predial larceny. I have searched for this in other countries, and I can't seem to find it. It is a Jamaican affliction. 2-foot posts. So I was very pleased as I entered the facility when I spoke with the senior superintendent in charge of the parish, who told me of the amazing reduction in murders and violent crimes, over a 49% reduction since the beginning of the year. I offered my commendations to the police team. They have done an amazing job. But I commend you, the citizens of the parish, because your own cooperation is also important in the reduction of violence, and I encourage you to continue to cooperate with the strategies and policies of the government and with the tactics of the police in reducing these murders. But your cooperation is going to be needed even more, because the police pointed out that they do have a strategy to deal with predial larceny in the area, and that strategy relies heavily on the cooperation of the farmers and the citizens generally, so that we can finally put an end to those 2-foot posts. Minister Green, thank you for bigging up everybody, but I must big up our British High Commissioner. When David Cameron was the Prime Minister, he visited Jamaica sometime in 2015, and he launched the Caribbean Investment Fund. You see how long ago that was? I was then leader of the opposition. I had an opportunity to meet him, and this was part of the discussion. So I'm very happy today, in 2025, 10 years after, to be able to turn over to the farmers of Clarendon this agro park. Jamaica has about 40% of its landmass which could be considered arable, meaning you can farm it. Of that, presently, only about 15% would be irrigated. 15%. With this and Essex Valley, the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project, SPAD it is called, we will probably get close to 20% of our arable lands irrigated. That's still not enough. I want you to consider what that means. It means that you can only exercise some degree of control over your agriculture in only 15% of your arable land. The rest of your lands would be subject to the vicissitudes, the change in weather. So the output, the productivity that you would like to get would be subject to climate change issues, weather issues, and that's not good for sustained agriculture. And so the strategy of the government, which is why when we were asked, what would you like the support that is coming from the Caribbean Infrastructure Fund to be deployed into? We said, let's put it into making our agriculture resilient and sustainable. Let's build infrastructure that mitigates climate, weather, and other factors. And so that is what we're doing here today. This is a big thing. Now, we have another big project that is being worked on. Minister Green pointed out that the last time the Minister of Agriculture did anything of this magnitude, which would be Spring Plains, he wasn't born yet. Well, to give you a sense of the generations, I was. But even before I was born, the politician after whom I was named, Michael Manley, had the idea, he posited the idea, of harnessing the water from the Black River to irrigate the Pedro Plains. That was 50 odd years ago. It wasn't done. I'm pleased to say that we are well on our way to doing it. And when we do Pedro Plains, which is well on its way, we would have moved our irrigated lands to being about 50% of our arable lands. Can you imagine the fundamental shift in our agricultural productivity when we are able to mitigate and control for weather impacts on our arable land? That's fundamental. But this is not the kind of achievement that voters celebrate, unfortunately. A lot of it is voters don't know this, some don't understand it. But the farmers who have been practicing mulching for decades in southern St. Elizabeth, because that is how they mitigated the weather effect, when they now have reliable water that is coming from pipes and irrigation systems that they can plan in advance, they will see the transformation. And what the average voter will see is far more foodstuff in their supermarket shelves and in the Coronation Market and in Linstead Market and in all over. But what they will also see is a stability in price. So this will have an impact on the cost of food. So yes, you, the average voter listening to me, who say, "Oh, this benefit me. This not going to only benefit the little farmer them in Parnassus." No, my friend. It is these kinds of investment that benefit you. The cost of living crisis that we face, a part of it is an agriculture crisis. It is precisely because we have low productivity in agriculture why we have a food price crisis. And until our voters make that connection to inform how they vote, they will not get good agricultural policies. What they will satisfy with are easy but destructive policies that say, well, we should put a tax on imported goods, rather than seeking to address the fundamental issues, which are more difficult, which are not going to happen in one election cycle, as this did not happen in one election cycle. This started in 2019. I wonder if you see what I'm saying. That the transformation of Jamaica is not going to be this. It is not going to be stupid promises, even lovely sounding promises. And as we are in the promising season, when politicians are going to come to tell you that they will give you horses that can fly, the worry is not the politicians who are going to tell you that the horse that they are selling can fly. The worry is the voter who believes. That is the worry. And therefore, as a politician, who, yes, I will come with gifts on mules, I have to also be very frank with you and tell you what the realities are. And that has always been me. Nobody can question that. I tell you as it is. I have learned a little bit that I have to put a little sugar on it here and there. I have learned. But I am still telling you as it is. So I can stand here today and tell you, not a promise, I am delivering on a commitment, and I'm telling you what else is coming. We are now at approximately 15% irrigated lands. After this project, we will be at approximately 20, and when we complete the Pedro Plains, which is it is going to cross the election cycle because it's a multi-year project, but when we complete it, we would be at about 50%. And that will be a profound shift in Jamaica's agriculture. So I could very well end my presentation here, but my speechwriters would be upset. So it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the official opening of the Parnassus Agro Park, an important step forward in our ongoing mission to transform agriculture in Jamaica. Today, we not only celebrate the commissioning of critical agricultural infrastructure, but we also recognize its role in my government's pivot towards inclusive, sustainable, and climate-resilient growth in rural agriculture. Today, we are planting the seeds of resilience and opportunity. This agro park represents a future where Jamaican farmers are empowered, communities are revitalized, and our country moves closer to a competitive and climate-resilient agriculture sector. Agriculture is not just a pillar of our economy, it is the foundation of our national food security. As global supply chains face increasing pressure and climate change threatens traditional productive systems, it is more important than ever that we as a country can feed ourselves. A strong agricultural sector ensures that our people have access to affordable, nutritious food, even in times of crisis. It reduces our dependence on imports, shields us from external shocks, and creates the conditions for real independence, economic and social. In a world marked by geopolitical tensions, rising energy costs, and unpredictable commodity markets, food security is now a matter of national security. But food security is also an important part of our economic policy. Food security is seen as an important part of what they would call the microeconomic policy. Agriculture, how do we get farmers onto land, get the prices stabilized, put in place infrastructure to support them? But in a sense, it is also a part of what you would describe as the kind of macroeconomic policy as well, because having a strong agricultural sector is a buffer to inflation. And I want to spend just a minute here to drive home that point. Because when the average Jamaican hears about inflation, the first thing that comes to mind is my purchasing power is going to be eaten out because the prices of goods have increased. And therefore, our wage negotiations, and I'm not dealing with wage negotiations here, but immediately there would be pressure on wages to be adjusted upwards in order to compensate for the loss of purchasing power due to inflation. I want you to think back for me, all of you who are here, including those of you who were born in the 80s and 90s, that's the beginning of your world, who may not understand the tragedy that Jamaica went through in the 90s with inflation. And in the 2000s, early, the impact of inflation then, the conversation then was about the macroeconomic adjustment So it's either you're going to increase your wages or increase your interest rates to keep your currency stable to avoid currency-induced inflation or imported inflation. But we have never had a conversation about the impact of increasing productivity on inflation. That's not a consideration in the Jamaican context. In other words, for the last 4 or 5 decades, we have not addressed the issue of productivity. So the permanent secretary uses a term, facade. He says it's a facade. The strategy of constantly trying to adjust wages to keep up with inflation is a facade. We're just tricking ourselves, keeping ourselves in a loop where we are constantly losing real value because we are not increasing our output. So what you have to see this as is an attempt to have a genuine, real increase in Jamaica's productivity, in Jamaica's output. And this is what will have a real impact on inflation. Now, granted, farmers, some of the inflation that happens in Jamaica, particularly in the past, happened because of bad government policy. Now, we have put bad government policy out of the mix by putting in place strong institutions. Independent central bank, strong fiscal structures to control government policy, and now we have inflation targeting. And so you will see that Staten released this month figures which were incredible. I think it was something like 0% inflation. In other words, meaning that government's policy is having very limited impact on inflation. So having solved that, then what would be the other drivers that could create inflation? Yes, imported inflation, and sometimes inflation induced because of supply issues. So for example, if there is bad weather and because of a drought, the output of farmers fall, what is going to happen to the price of goods in the market? It's going to go up and it's going to reflect as inflation. But if you make the hard choice that even when you're going to get costs for not doing things immediately, but you have made that long-term investment in digging the wells, in cutting the roads, in cutting the land, in getting the titles for the farmers, in building the reservoir to store the water, in buying those pumps, which take a long time, to make sure that when this comes into full operation, rain or shine, you will have a level of output that will keep prices stable. That is how you impact inflation and cost of living. This administration has changed the way in which government operates. We now need to change the way in which our electorate thinks. Because the old way of thinking is not going to solve the challenges of today and the challenges you face. So everybody says, yes, increase the minimum wage, which we have been doing gradually because we don't want an economic fallout. Everybody's quarreling about their wages and it's unfair, and I understand the issues, and we're trying our best to slowly make the adjustments so that we don't have an economic fallout. But beyond that, that is not going to be the solution for Jamaica. Beyond that, the solution has to be that each and every one of us must increase our productivity. It is in the increase in our output that the unit cost goes down and therefore the prices remain stable. How do I get the average Jamaican to appreciate that and shift the mentality to look at how do we become more productive? What this is an investment in our productivity. Every farmer who comes onto this land is immediately more productive than farmers struggling out there without water, without storage, without proper roads. And so the objective of the government, Minister Green, if he were released to tell you the discussions that we have in cabinet, he would know how much beating him get. To get these projects going, to get them out of the ground. Now, I'm not saying here I'm 100% pleased, because I do recall several conversations, even with former ministers, about why is this project taking so long? It shouldn't have taken this long. And as I look at it on reflection, this project is 2 years late. 2 years. Why? For another reason that I have said, Jamaica must address its public bureaucracy. You know, we have gotten caught into this culture of analysis paralysis. Yes. And there are those who will seek to say that you are corrupt, that you are trying to circumvent procedures. But what they are really wanting to do is to hide behind a wall of circuitous regulation that leads to nowhere. And in my mind, that is the corruption. It has no bearing on whether or not things are delivered quickly, whether or not the farmers benefit, whether or not the customer is served. No benefit to them. And we are going to destroy that. We're going to break down that wall of unnecessary bureaucracy. Things that don't make sense. Entities that have been formed and are on the public's budget year after year and can't show what they give to the public, those allocations must be questioned. There are many government entities that claim your taxes. They live only to serve themselves. When you ask them, why I have to fill out this form? Why I have to do that? Why this? They can't tell you. They just say, well, it's the law. And for those who are quick to be critical, just sit down and listen. Because Jamaica is not the only country going through this. I listened to Keir Starmer make his presentation after I made my pivot speech. And it was as if he took my pivot speech and reread it. And he made sweeping changes, or will make sweeping changes, spoke about the NHS, spoke about digitization and other things. But it's not just Keir Starmer. I mean, I don't want to draw on Doge in the United States. But just up the road from us in the Dominican Republic, who would be in our peer group, they recognize this and they are moving swiftly ahead to make their bureaucracy agile. We have to rethink the dense layer of bureaucracy that we have placed on our public servants. They don't want to innovate or take any risk, lest their names be dragged mercilessly in the public domain. That is not going to help us grow. I keep saying, you know, There are those who believe that they can deal with corruption by shaming people, destroying people's reputations. But they will never speak about inefficiency. They will never examine a system for its inefficiency. And what costs us as Jamaican taxpayers is inefficiency. Oftentimes, the flip side of corruption is inefficiency. And if you want to deal with corruption, deal with inefficiency. Treat with the systems that move slowly. Treat with the systems that have circuitous regulations. Because in systems that are efficient, there is no room for corruption. Because efficient systems, by definition, are transparent systems. So when we talk about addressing the bureaucracy of Jamaica, we want to make our bureaucracy transparent. We want performance to be evaluated so that you can see and match effort to outcome. So that there is no secret veil that separates someone's effort versus outcome. And that's where we have to move with dealing with bureaucracy. So this project, in my estimation, should have been at least a year and a half earlier. So our growth has been delayed. And we accept it because, there's a thinking in our culture that if it didn't take long, it wasn't well done. That's very strange for the fastest people in the world. So, Kristalina Georgieva, the head of the IMF, she made a presentation recently speaking about the global challenges as a result of the emerging trade conflicts. And in her presentation, which I thought was very sobering and very thoughtful, she said that she is not expecting that there will be a recession. However, she is expecting that there will be a slowdown, and they will probably come out with revised figures for global growth. And she is also expecting that there will be some inflation, but no hyperinflation, which is, I think, a reasonable expectation. But bear in mind that is just an outlook. It all depends on the moving parts that we cannot at this time predict where they will go. But she also said that when these major changes are happening globally, it is the small countries that are impacted the most. Small countries are impacted the most. Jamaica has been this way before. In the 70s, there was a global move to increase oil prices. Again, many of you were not born, some of you were there, but how you appreciated what was happening, you may not have had this perspective on it. But countries that control an important global resource, oil, OPEC, decided that they would come together and control, or rather increase, the price of oil internationally. And that led to massive economic dislocations in Jamaica, precipitated a debt crisis for Jamaica. How did we maneuver ourselves in that period of time? And the truth is that the impact from the 70s and the 80s followed us through to now. Are we any different today facing these global changes in international trade than we were 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when global oil prices changed? Is our economy any different? And I will say to you that the fundamental principle of this government is that Jamaica must be economically independent. Michael Manley had his own way of saying it. He said, self-reliance. It's essentially the same thing, but not necessarily always the same thing, but the same principle. We must be economically independent as a people. And how are we different today? Today, and our policies are very much aligned with what the head of the IMF has pointed out. She said a lot of the vulnerability of small countries is because they are highly indebted or are facing climbing debt. Today, Jamaica is still relatively indebted, not highly, but the difference is we have policies in place that are driving down our debt, even in the face of crisis. Even when there are politicians who would say, ignore reducing the debt, spend now. We have not done that. We have remained committed to driving down the debt so that when the global shocks occur, which they will, Jamaica will be able to withstand those global shocks. And the impacts on you and your life will be minimized. So Jamaica is totally different today than it was 40, 50, 30, even 20 years ago. Secondly, she says that we must build infrastructure to mitigate against climate impact. And that is what we have been doing. If you look at this here, this is exactly what this agro park is. We are building infrastructure that will mitigate the impact of climate. But she also said that we have to improve our regulatory and bureaucratic environment in order to be agile. And that is the next stage of our government policy now, to pivot, to create the competitive advantage with our bureaucracy. And let me just quickly say why that is important. Just up the road from us, the Dominican Republic has landed a major investment, which is as a result of the change in global supply chain because of the change in trade policies. It's a multi-billion US dollar investment into their economic free zone. Why did they choose the Dominican Republic? One, they do have labor, and there is some arbitrage in wages. Secondly, they have an established special economic zones, been there for almost 60 years, with specified incentives. We have just built ours, and we will build out the Caymanas economic zone. Thirdly, their bureaucracy is more agile and responsive to foreign investment. And so if Jamaica is to compete in its peer group, the way in which our intellectuals and some of our public opinion leaders think about our society will have to change and understand that what they held sacrosanct a decade ago does not hold today. We must be agile. We must become efficient. We must become more productive. And we must become more peaceful as a people. And that is what this administration is driving for. That is not with any sugarcoating. That is not with any beautiful speaking. That is just telling you what the realities are. So I appeal to you in this promising season. Pay attention to the global trends and consider which administration can best handle these difficult seas that the ship of Jamaica faces. Who can best carry us into safe harbor, and who has been carrying us in these difficult waters without any form of collapse, without any form of overturning, without going astray, running aground. It is this administration. And so every week, this has never happened in the history of Jamaica. Every week, I'm in the field doing this, handing over a major project, turning on a water supply, housing scheme, everything we're doing. Because we have been a working government, not a promising government. We are a working government. We are delivering to the people. And we do it bearing in mind that our development must be inclusive. You have approximately 700 acres here at Parnassus, an old sugar plantation. This was sugarcane lands. And we have allotted 400 of those 700 acres specifically for small farmers. So I don't want to hear this argument that we're leaving out small man out of development. Rubbish! Everything that we do, we think about every sector of Jamaica. So we're making sure that our small farmers are incorporated and included right here at Parnassus. And then, out of that, we have allocated certain acreages for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. This is what development looks like. So, it therefore, and I should also say that there were some persons farming here before. And we sat with them. Some of them are here. And we said to you, look, you are farmers. We love you and respect you, but we know you're not the chaka-chaka business. And I know you're not comfortable in a chaka-chaka business. You want to be properly recognized. And so they made sure to give you proper lease arrangements. Some of you went to Hart and got trained. That's what we take care of our people. Yes. So, 240 farmers were trained. Yes, so, that is what growth and development and inclusive government looks like. So all them a talk and I call up my name. Them can't get me out of the game. So my friends, It was my great pleasure being with you. You have been a wonderful audience. God bless you. Farm enough, grow enough. Choose Jamaica.
Thank you, Prime Minister Holness. Please give him another round of applause. Lessons in social living and economics presented in a very simplified, pragmatic way. You can't miss it, you know. It's like 0, 0, 0 in economics and in management. If you want to learn how to run a country, you can listen to the Prime Minister. I bet all of you feel empowered like you could go and run it yourself. Budding politicians around, can't get him out of the game. You understand me? Work with it. Work with it. Prime Minister, at this time we want to hand over the leases that you mentioned, because after that kind of speech, there's nothing else to do more than to make the farmers happier. But as we proceed to do that, Prime Minister, I want to remind you that the citrus plants that you needed to add to your citrus orchard, they are still available at the ministry. And you and while people bemoan the absence of lime is in it too. Nice limes for you. I suspect Mrs. Holness will, for the sugar-coated idea, squeeze some lime in it and get it tasting like lemonade. You know? So at this time, we are pleased to proceed with the symbolic handover of leases for 6 of our dedicated farmers, but in total, we have close to 40 of them here. Now, you know, in the interest of time, we're going to be handing over some, but everybody will get an opportunity to take a photograph with the Prime Minister after the leases have been handed over to the 6. So the first 2 will be presented by Prime Minister Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, and I now invite him and Mr. Scully, the CEO of the Agro Invest Corporation, to facilitate this process over to my left, where those leases are going to be presented. You can come forward, Mr. Scully and Prime Minister, over to the left. Farmers to receive leases at this time from the Prime Minister. We want to invite Noel Reid. Mr. Reid, please give him a round of applause. Please come forward. He occupies 12.34 acres of the agro park, and he currently growing cash crops and tubers. Mr. Reid was an informal farmer on the lands for over 10 years and has since been formalized. Please give Mr. Reid a round of applause. You want to move this? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next up, Chanel Henry, 29 years old. She occupies 93 acres. Oh, his father. Her father. The lease will be collected by her father, Mr. Vendris Henry. But his daughter occupies 93 acres, which she plans to use for orchard crops and pepper production. Miss Henry is a new investor and a beaming example of youth maximizing on the opportunities to excel in agriculture. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Yes. Farmers to receive leases from the Honorable Minister. Please come forward, Minister Green. We want to call on stage here Mr. Roy Martin and Keone Smith, who have joint lease to occupy 6.13 acres of land, and they are also in the business of cash crops and tubers. Both of them, please give them a round of applause. Give them a round of applause. We also want to invite Colleen Walker and Anita Facey, another joint lease, but they occupy 11.5 acres of land and are also in the business of cash crops and tubers. Minister and Prime Minister, these are professional members of the Heart Trust NTA staff. Supplementing income like you, Mr. Prime Minister. In farming. Thank you very much, Minister. We now invite our State Minister, Honorable Franklin Witter. And we are going to be asking to join him on stage Julian Crooks, Israel, operating on 6 acres of land. She intends to grow Scotch bonnet pepper, sweet potatoes, and sweet corn. Congratulations. We also want to invite Dorette James, who occupies 5.6 acres of land and also intends to grow cash crop and tubers. Please give her a round of applause. Great. Please give them all a round of applause. Gentlemen, you may take your seat.